Hello, in this video I'm going to be looking at equipment on Reforged. Now, the reason I've started making some Reforged content from this most recent test is because, it's finally nearing its release, so it's unlikely Wargaming is going to make some massive change or even minor change to certain aspects of the game, hence why I'm doing a video on equipment now, because literally in the previous test, equipment had complete different stats to what it has now. Now, for equipment, I'm not going to be switching between the two games, as it is just annoying. You can check against the screen which I show the kind of changes they have done to equipment. Just pull up your own game and open the equipment and you'll see what they have done. It is worth noting, provisions have been removed from Reforged, likely to make space for some other system in the future, and I think Wargaming already knows the current equipment system is kind of flawed because it gives you a fairly limited choice for what you can do on your tanks, so maybe they might implement that into a future system of equipment if they ever do change that up. But anyway, it is worth noting provisions have been removed. Some of them have been incorporated into equipment. But again, equipment is something where it's kind of a flawed system. You have to choose one or the other, which with provisions, you can, take three. You can maximize on your HP if you've got 3 HP provisions. You can't really do that with equipment because you've got to make a choice between one or the other, such as here. Anyway, let's get right into it. So starting with vents, simplest way to say it, vents have been nerfed. They have removed some of the benefits from vents. More minor ones such as hull traverse speed, terrain resistance, and dispersion. Dispersion's not really minor, but they have kept view range, aim time, and reload time as benefits for vents. I believe that the reason they've done this is just for simplification, because I feel like with so many stats on the screen on vents and them not necessarily being a big bonus to one certain area on the tank, it can be confusing to players who are newer to the game or who aren't necessarily understanding every aspect or stat in the game. So this one is just a simplification, but they have kept the amounts the same for view range, aim time, and reload time. Next, calibrated shell. Wait, no, not calibrated shells yet. Let's talk about gun rammer. So, gun rammer has stayed the same. It's worth noting because they have removed food. Some tanks may lose a slight bit of DPM. They have kind of compensated for it in some other areas, so most tanks have kind of the same reload as they did before, but some of them I have noticed have gone down. But for the most part, such as the T100 LT here, the reload time stays roughly the same, 5.9 seconds here, and in current blitz is 5.85. DPM in current blitz is 3180, here it is 3157, so it's a little bit off, but you have roughly the same DPM as before for gun rammer. There's no change to that equipment piece. Next, calibrated shells. This has been nerfed massively for heat. Now, I know for a lot of players that's a big disappointment because calibrated shells quite an important equipment piece for your tank, right? Penetrating the enemy more consistently is going to generally give you a bigger reward than the amount given from vents or from gun rammer, because you're not having to use your premium ammo as often, thus your damage on standard is higher. But I believe this is actually a very, very good equipment piece change, because calibrated shells created just a horrible meta where you'd face, the exact same enemy tank in different battles, right? Let's say one was using gun rammer, the other was using calibrated shells. Against one enemy, you're going to bounce every single one of their shots, even on premium ammo. If they're shooting the same armor plate, let's say the upper plate, the other enemy would penetrate through every single time because they're using calibrated shells. So it just causes a massive inconsistency for tank armor, right? And for players who aren't playing the game like a lot, or who are just playing casually or don't understand every aspect of the game, it might be confusing to them, right? Why does my tank have armor against this tank in one battle but then completely not in the other battle? I'm facing the same situation, they're shooting the same place. It doesn't make much sense. So I think, having calibrated shells with a massive heat nerf is in fact a good thing. Sure, it's a bit of a disappointment, especially if you really liked min-maxing the penetration on your tanks, but I think it's a necessary evil kind of change. On top of nerfing heath shells from 13% to 7%, HE has also been nerfed from 8 to 7. I don't think it was really necessary. I think it received a big enough nerf from the previous equipment change, but oh well. AP has also been nerfed from 8 to 6, and APCR has been buffed from 5 to 6. Again, nerf for this equipment piece, but I think it is very much a necessary change because Calibrated Shells just gave way too much penetration to basically all tanks. And also, in case you didn't notice, it caused certain tanks to be balanced around this factor, because a lot of players would take Calibrated Shells on their autoloader tanks. Wargaming started releasing autoloader tanks with much lower penetration than they otherwise would have. So yeah, that is, I think, why it is kind of necessary that this one does receive a change as it has done here. But next, failsafe modules. What they've done is they've moved enhanced tracks, which used to be here, up to this. So, a horrible piece of equipment which was basically useless. It basically does nothing for your tank. Even if you put this on, enemy tanks that shoot at your tracks will still take it off in the same number of shots for the majority of cases. Unless they have fixed that for Reforged, failsafe modules or enhanced tracks is still useless, and there's not really been a change to this. Next, defense system. Also, if you're wondering where did the minus ramming damage go, that has been moved to another piece of equipment, which I'll get into in a minute. Next, defense system. 30% less probability of ammo rack explosion. Again, a nerf to this piece of equipment. They have removed the module protection and crew injury protection from defense system. I think it has been moved to this protective kit thing, but this thing now only gives minus percentage to your ammo rack explosion chance. Next, improved optics. This one has been buffed for some tanks. In fact, maybe for all tanks. As you can see on the Waffen, which is a tank destroyer, it gives 11% to view range. And on the T100 LT, which is a light tank, it gives 18% to view range. But for the most part, the tanks have the same view range in-game as they do in Reforged, in-game currently, sorry. And the reason being is because provisions were removed. So I think in the current game, tank destroyers gain 4% from optics, and in Reforged they gain 11% from optics. But the view range stays roughly the same. That's just because of the provisions removal. Next, Camo Net. I'm not too sure of the changes on this one, but it gives still a camo bonus to the tank. It's 9% for TDs, and for light tanks it is 8%. So I think for the most part, camo rating has, well, the Camo Net has stayed the same for the majority of vehicles. 5% for medium tanks. Next, turbocharged engine. This thing gives you extra forward speed and reverse speed, and it is for every tank. So this is quite a big change for all vehicles, because unlike with, for example, gear oil, that is only on certain tanks. This is for every tank, meaning you can boost the top speed forward and backwards for any tank you have currently in your garage. It also gives you 18% to engine power, which is roughly the amount that you get from the fuel provision. I think in the current game, this equipment gives you 4% engine power. It also increases your traverse speed, which it is worth noting, this does not increase your traverse speed. So using this, you'll be quicker forwards and backwards, and you'll have better engine power, but your traverse speed does not go up. That is something you have to note. Next, combat control unit, i.e. the, gosh, I can't remember, but it improves your traverse speed. In the current game, it only gives you better traverse speed, and they have kept it the same for Reforged. However, they have also added on the benefit of turret traverse speed, as that was one of the bonuses that fuel gave, the fuel provision, and of course with provisions gone, they had to add it to an equipment piece. And it kind of makes sense to give it to the equipment piece that also improves your hull traverse speed. Now you'll see here it does increase your aim time. That's just because when you turn faster, your gun blooms out more, therefore when you stop to aim in, you have to aim in for a bit longer. It doesn't actually nerf your aim time. But yeah, faster turret traverse speed on top of your hull traverse speed. And again, they've adjusted the numbers to kind of compensate for the removal of provisions to keep it basically the same as current Blitz. Next one, reinforced frame or improved assembly. This still gives the same amount of HP by 4%, so that is the same as current Blitz. On top of that, it gives you 3% more terrain crossing capacity, which is your terrain resistance. This, I believe, has been moved from vents. So again, this one is for all tanks, which means compared to current Blitz, you get extra traverse speed and also terrain resistance on all tanks. It is just like turbocharged engine, it is actually extra stats for your tank in terms of mobility. So it is quite nice to also have that extra hull traverse speed, but it does kind of mean you have to lose out on it if you do want to improve your armor. So enhanced armor, or layered armor as they call it, it remains the same. It gives you 3% more armor thickness on all areas of armor. The only thing they have added to this is the 40% ramming damage, which they moved from improved modules, which is in current Blitz. Honestly, the 40% ram damage kind of makes sense on this equipment, but it's not going to affect it massively, I don't think. Next, aim accelerator or gun lane drive. I think this one has been nerfed from current Blitz. In current Blitz, it gives you 15%, I believe, and here it gives 12%. So the aim time is going to be a little bit slower. I think that is just a general rebalance though, because in the previous equipment rework it only gave 10% and then they buffed it to 15, which I believe is quite a lot for an equipment piece. Yeah, I just checked the current Blitz, it is 15 in current Blitz, so they did nerf this one. I think that is just a general nerf though, intentional, and it's not the removal of provisions. They definitely removed 3% off this deliberately. Next, Supercharged Shells. I believe this is exactly the same as current Blitz, 35% shell velocity and 60% penetration drop-off. Exactly the same as the current game. Next, Vertical Stabilizer. This has been buffed massively to be 22% dispersion when moving, which gives you a huge boost to your effective aim time, which means that when you are moving, or after you've stopped moving to aim in, your gun's going to aim in a lot quicker than it is in current Blitz, because in current Blitz it only gives you 12% dispersion when moving. They've buffed that by a full 10%, which is a lot. But again, it could be compensating for that nerf on the aim time and also the provisions removal for which makes your aim time worse and your dispersion worse. It could be compensating for both of those. Next is refined gun, or precision rifling as they're calling it here, 11% to dispersion at 100 meters. That has been nerfed. It is, I believe, 15% in the current Blitz. I'll just go ahead and check that. Yeah, in current Blitz it is 15% less dispersion. Here it has been nerfed to 11%. Just going to check that quickly, that it's the same across all tank classes, because sometimes Wargaming does a sneaky thing where they have it different across different tank classes. But yeah, it is 11% across all tank classes, so your tanks are now going to be a bit less accurate. Again, just like the gun lane drive, I think this was a deliberate nerf. I don't think that this was an accident. I don't think Wargaming forgot. I think they looked at it and thought, well, refined gun's a bit powerful right now, so we're going to nerf that back. And, you know, they did. From 15 to 11%. So we'll kind of see how that works out in Reforged. Also, it is worth noting, aiming in Reforged will probably feel a little bit different just because of the engine change. So we'll have to kind of see how this actually works out. It might say it's less accurate, so going from 15 to 11, but it might feel roughly the same. You can't really tell until you play properly against proper enemies in a live game. Playing against bots isn't really going to help us to tell. Next, this used to be enhanced tracks. It has been changed to additional protective kit. Basically, what it does is it changes, well, it adds what defense system used to give to, well, where enhanced tracks used to be. It gives you better repair speed, it gives you better fire protection, and it gives you crew protection. So if you play the tank in battle and you notice those things are kind of getting damaged, then you can run this. Again, this is basically Toolbox kind of combined with the protective kit provision moved into an equipment piece. So they did kind of account for at least one of the protection provisions on the tanks. Next, power drink. This thing again has been changed to previous Reforged tests. It gives you now better aim time and better reload time. You need to run this if you want to have the same reload time as you had in current Blitz. Like I said with the T100 LT, is that its reload time is very similar with the gun rammer, but that was also with power drink installed. If you take that off, then its DPM goes to 3030, which is a lot less than the 3180 which it is in current Blitz. Again, that is because provisions have been removed, and this is one of those provisions. You have to use it in your equipment to be able to get that same bonus. Like I said, equipment itself is a flawed system because you have to choose between these two. In provisions, where it's kind of a 3 slots, you choose what you want thing, you can take both. But in equipment, being such a flawed system, you can only take one of them. So honestly, for me, I really do hope that they rework equipment to actually be completely different. To be basically more like provisions, more like World of Tanks PC equipment. But, you know, we'll have to see if they actually do anything with equipment in the future. The final two, high-end consumables and I can't remember, consumable delivery system, have remained the exact same, 12% and 33%. Now, if you're wondering about your special provisions and all that, they have also been moved to equipment, but it is worth noting that they replace the power drink equipment. So power drink, again, remember, that gives you 4% reload time, 4% aiming time. On tanks with special provisions, they can't run that, so are going to naturally have a slightly worse reload. However, as you can see with the Gorilla 15, it seems like they've kind of accounted for that. It seems like Wargaming has actually gone and deliberately buffed up the DPM of the Gorilla just to be the same as it is currently if you ran, well, without certain provisions. I will actually open my current Blitz window just to show that. So let's look at the DPM. 3626 on the Gorilla with 9.9 second reload, and that is without the power drink equipment. If we go to the current Blitz, find the Gorilla 15 and check out what its its reload time is, you can see it is 10.02 seconds. And of course, that is with these different things equipped. I don't have double food on. If I did have double food, I would have the same 9.9 second reload, 3516 DPM. So with that same 9.9 second reload, you can see they have actually accounted for that in the Reforged version with the same reload. It does say 3626 DPM. I'm not too sure how that can be. Oh, they buffed its alpha to 600. Yeah, but they kept its reload the same, so that is nice to see that on some tanks they have actually tried to account for it with some direct tank buffs. But we'll have to see if that remains. Again, remember, this is not the final version of Reforged, so don't take this as 100%, but this is where your provisions are for special provision tanks. I will just look at some examples such as the Skoda T56 because that does have multiple provision choices. But in this case, Wargaming has decided that sandbag armor is the provision it should have, and gear oil and all that other stuff has been removed. Now on this account I don't have Prowler because the Prowler event only started recently and I didn't have it when this test started, so I can't actually show you the Prowler to check that. But for example, the Kari, you can see here, it does have that shell velocity with improved gunpowder, but again, it's replacing power drink, so your reload time is slightly slower. yeah, that is, I think, it for equipment. I think I've covered everything. Again, remember, provisions have been removed, so you do have to make some small sacrifices to your equipment to achieve kind of what you had before, but at least they are not massive changes to the tank. And for the most part, from playing tanks, I can say they feel mostly the same. Some of them have slightly less reload, which is unfortunate, but hopefully Wargaming will address that in the future and, make sure that all tanks are actually accounted for with the main traits they are supposed to have. But yeah, that is it. Thanks all for watching.